righty. So welcome back, Inner Sanctum, Sanctum SuperCoach followers for another week. We've got a whole bunch of names for our SuperCoach Sanctum thing. So just keep searching for it in Spotify and on YouTube. Sorry about, obviously, you're probably looking out for the last episode and it didn't get up in time, but we're working through a few things and hopefully this one will make it to your screens well ahead of time, because I know that you're all, needing to have those expert commentary, ahead of picking a team for round two. With me, I have George. George, how's your week?
Yep, pretty good. Felt like I came out of it relatively unscathed, despite some of the injuries, but pretty happy with how I've started.
Excellent. And Scott, how's your first week?
Just average. I think it was almost the average score. So whatever, a couple of duds, a couple of stars, but you know the deal. We'll sort it out.
Yeah, sure do. I sure do, given that almost every one of my pods absolutely stunk it up. But that gives us a decent segue going into our first thing. If those of you are new to the podcast, you might not be aware, but each week we do a Gary Ablett, someone that has absolutely dominated for our team, and we do a Nathan Ablett, someone who has not really set the world alight and hasn't lived up to the father's name. Just want to point out, though, that last year and every year that this happens, I still go, Nathan Ablett, he's still got a premiership medal around his neck, so he's doing better than all of us. So just want to shout that out to Nathan. Alrighty. George, who are your two?
Yep. I'll start with my Gary, and I'm going to kick it off with Tom Green. I was never really too hot on him going throughout the whole preseason just because of that bye. But I saw the practice match and I went, I'm not going to pick someone who I think isn't going to score what he's going to score. And he proved me exactly right. He put up 152. I slapped the VC on him, so I got those double points. Shout out Cone Livingston, the little runner-up Gary, just for what he's done this week. 37 touches, 9 tackles and a goal. He's just he's so good. I don't get how he's just this absolute piglet. He is so fun to watch. He's the freak. I'll turn to my Nathan now, and it's a split between two. I'm going to say both their names, but I'll elaborate on one. Zach Fisher and Hayden Young both were disappointing, to say the least. I'm going to go with Hayden Young, though, just because his score was really killed by how many clangers he had. It wasn't just like turnovers, but he gave away something like 4 free kicks. It was 11 clangers in the end for 70 Supercoach. He still had 24 touches and 10 tackles. Like, on paper, decent game. The big red flags were all the Fremantle's injuries, which might mean that he now has to swing into the back line for the next few weeks, depending on how they look structuring up the next few rounds. Hopefully it means that they just keep him there as that sort of defensive side midfielder. But otherwise, if it looks like he's going to be moved back, he might be someone we need to think about a correctional for. But he is my Nathan of the week. Scott, how are you feeling?
Yeah, look, I've got Youngie and Zach, so yeah, no good. I've also got Tom Green, so that was a good one. My Gary is someone who I thought, I don't even know why I didn't put the VC on him. If Collingwood plays Thursday, Friday night, Dacos should just be the vice captain. It felt like he was the only one for Collingwood trying, and it was anywhere near the ball. It felt like he got 135. I'm just going to lock him in at vice captain this Thursday night for sure. And my Nathan, he went a bit of a pod with my ruck and went Briggsy, and then he just stunk it up with a 57. I think he had, anytime I checked the scores in the game, halfway through the second quarter, he had about 45. So I have no idea what happened. Didn't get to catch him, but Briggsy let me down. Dan?
Yeah, look, it was up against Tristan Jerry, who managed to crack the ton in his first game of the year. So it's a really interesting one. Look, my Gary for this week is a guy who got a lot of talk last year, and that is your boy, Scott, Max Holmes. I went with him. You know what? I didn't regret it once. Like, from the first quarter, I don't know how many touches he had. I think he had 8 touches or something in the first. But every single one of them was just at absolute pace, hitting a contest or getting a flicked handball. Pretty happy with watching him for the next few weeks anyway, until inevitably something will happen. I hope not. I'm similar to George in this one. I've got I've got so many Nathans to pick from, I'll be honest. My team was abysmal. But tossing up between Nick Martin, who was supposed to be a quarterback role, supposed to be a really good user, went at 56% by foot, 63 SuperCoach. But the absolute out and out star of my team, or reverse star, I guess, would have to be Connor Butterick, 17 SuperCoach from 7 disposals. And you might be going, well, did he get injured, Dan? No, the guy played 86% game time. So why is he only getting 7? Well, look, I reckon he had a bit of a tagging role with some of the Crows forwards. But still, like, if he's getting that, I think that's just an absolute turf. And look, he might make an appearance later on in the show as well. Who knows? Moving on. Obviously, it's with the round gone, there's a heap of things that have tossed up a few different problems for us and things we might want to keep an eye on. So we kick things into Rookie Watch. And the first question I've got for you is, if you have Gibcus, who comes in for him? Like, what are we looking at? What do you think? Scott, I'll throw to you first. Any ideas of who you might... Do you have Gibcus?
Of course I do. It's like 70% of sides or something have Gibcus. So, look, first and only round of the season, I won't watch much because I was playing a bit of cricket this weekend, but the only one I really just noticed points-wise was Big Mass from Hawthorn. So one of you can tell me exactly how much he had, because I know he absolutely carved it up possession-wise.
I think it's about 120 odd. About
120. Yeah. So the only downside is that he's a bit more expensive than Gibcus, so I'm going to have to potentially decide who goes down for him. But I think the only issue you've got is, yes, you're going to have to trade him out, but do you wait another week potentially and just chuck him on the bench? That's something maybe to consider, because if these guys have another big week, then it's definite. But if they have a stinker, then you have to sort of weigh it up again. So your thoughts, George?
Yeah, Massimo is probably the best of the players, because the rookies didn't look like the rest of the 1, 2, 3K guys didn't look great. I feel like if you didn't have Marty Hoare, you had Caulfield. If you didn't have Caulfield, you had Marty Hoare. And both were fine. I think Hoare scored 60, Caulfield about a 50 odd. So if you didn't have Hoare, he's probably the easiest replacement. Caulfield, I'm not would be as keen to bring in. The other one's Charlie D, who put up about a 60 odd and is on the bubble this week, but he just was getting an absolute bath in that Sydney game. So I would be really, really concerned about whether he's actually best 22. So he's probably the best chance to actually make some quick cash, but that's if he plays, and I don't think he will. Yeah, I have been sort of playing around with trades and stuff, and Gibcus, I'd sort of try to make it Gibcus centered because he's the obvious trade out. He's going to have to go at some point. But I'm really just playing around with where that money can go, because I don't have the money to go to Massimo in 1 week. And I'd like to get another look at him just because that role was maybe a little bit deceptive, because it was more of a wing role than a traditional half-back role. He could just as easily pump out a 50 or a 60 next week, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we've really just missed the point of getting him. So yeah, just something to consider about Massimo. Just why I'm a little scared.
Yeah, look, and I completely agree with you. In terms of Gibcus is not going to go up or down. Like, he's just going to keep his value. So if you've got bench cover, stick him on your bench. Have a look at these guys a second time around. And if you're like me and you've got a bigger problem on field of the player that's on the bubble this week and potentially facing a break even over 100, those could be the ones that you want to prioritize. Alrighty, so who are we keeping a close eye on for their second game? Obviously, we did mention some back-centric sort of things, and Massimo is probably at the top of that list. But is there anyone else that we're keeping a close eye on?
Well,
throw to you, George.
George, you go. Yeah. There's only one, because the one game I did watch, and we didn't talk, it hasn't been talked about, and that's my man. I'm calling him my man now, not quite, but Ollie Dempsey from the Mighty Cats, just under 150K. There is no way after that performance. We haven't seen Who's the Rising Star, but he should be, being biased. But there's no. He is sweet. See, he should be right for a position. he shouldn't lose his spot for weeks. Like, there's others in that forward line. Yes, they're premiership players, but he actually had a crack. He jumped at the ball. He was the most likely forward. So, yes, he's not going to score big every single week, but he's only 150K. He could easily make us $200,000. So watch for another week, see how he goes this Friday night against the Crows, and then get ready to go, I reckon.
I don't like planning trades, but he's someone who I've already sort of penciled in as coming in next week. Would just like to get one more look at him more just to be safe more than anything in case there's, by God, an injury or after the game he says, you know what, that's it, I'm quitting football.
Yeah.
The 0.1% chance that happens. Some of the other rookies that I think we can look at, the North Melbourne defender, Callum Dawson, about 183K, so sort of that in between Gibcus and Massimo. Pumped out about an 80, I think it was. Might have been a 60 odd. I can quickly check, but he just looked pretty decent. I was watching that game pretty heavily beside the Green VC and a bunch of other North players. Dawson put up a 64, a little less than I thought. But if he's going to be someone who's on the bubble and actually getting game time, you've always got to consider him, especially some of the defender rookies that we've got. Having people who are at least scoring more than 50 is a nice win. More than 15 is even better. Otherwise, Buku Kamas from the Bulldogs had a couple of really nice moments, had a couple of less nice moments. He got absolutely turned by Ben Brown, which was not inspiring as someone who already has him in their team. Put up about a 50. I reckon he's pretty safe in their team. I know O'Donnell's due back, or at least on the fringe, but they like Buku. They like to get games into him, so I'd be pretty keen to watch how he goes again. Another defender, Carl Warner from Freo. He's not an option for at least the next week. He got absolutely KO'd on that Brisbane game, but he's 134K, was scoring pretty well up until he was taken off the field, but just one to look at when he does come back. Gallagher from the Bulldogs, another 123K forward. Like Buku, maybe some job security questions, but was playing pretty decent. Didn't get subbed off, unlike Riley Sanders, which is quite upsetting to see. But what Bevo gonna Bevo, he is the biggest SuperCoach villain, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, last year.
Gallagher,
last year, George Bevo copped it as our Nathan, like every second week. So always,
I'm not surprised.
Always keen to steer clear of random Bulldogs, and who knows who's going to play where and how and what.
But Gallagher, he kicked a goal, had a decent first quarter. There are better forward options. I don't think we'll need him, but just someone to watch in case he goes big. And the last one I'll touch on is Zane Dersma from North. Playing that sort of like hybrid forward role, almost like a Bailey Fritsch type, where he can sort of get up the ground and mark, but work back, be a little bit of a pest and get in and around the contest, kick some goals. Scored about a 70 odd. I just mentioned we don't really need forward options, especially ones at elevated price points. But if he goes big again, he's locked into that team. So he's definitely someone we can look at again.
Yeah, I was watching that game and he looked pretty good, like every time he was around the ball. Just to shout out to an Essendon supporter, mate, that he's the better Dersma. So, we've got a few things to keep our eyes on. Just wanted to point out as well, like you're talking about Dawson for North playing that back line. I mean, Josh Goda with that Achilles out for the season, obviously that, I don't know whether they're a similar sort of role there, but it does, free up a spot at least in that back six. Alrighty. Going forward, obviously, we've spoken about so many different players, and last week we spoke about an absolute heap. I think only one of these guys got a mention, but it was only like a really fleeting mention. So we did miss a few, and that's always going to happen when you've got however many debutants we had over round one. I actually don't even know how many debutants and round zero. But maybe we'll do one each. Scott, who was one player that you missed?
Well, not one that I missed. The one I actually took George's advice from a couple of weeks ago is Cadman. Just thought if he can just have a big enough go then his price will go up enough. Scored 72 on the weekend. He's not losing his spot anytime soon. And if he can average 72, his price will go up by 150, 200,000, I reckon. So that's enough for me to keep him.
Yeah,
nice.
With Cadman, I've got him in my team. I'm looking at flipping him right after his game against North, unless he goes absolutely massive, and then just taking that quick price rise right before the buy and jumping into Dempsey. So that's how I think my pathway to Dempsey will be found. Two who are on the bubble, one less soaks he's got to buy, and I'll speak about him first. Jack Carroll, 123k mid, started round one as a sub, came on pretty early due to I think it was on for Doherty.
He was, yeah.
Doherty
Scored well.
half-time.
Yeah, thank you. Scored well, was getting CBA rotations, and we thought, well, if he plays round two or plays round one and looks good as well, then probably put him in. And he was good again. He was in the midfield again. Bit of a watch if Sam Walsh comes back, but I think he's done enough to warrant being selected with Sam Walsh in the team anyway. Put about a 60 than 70, so he's got a pretty low break even.
74 last week.
There you go. I'm looking at potentially getting him in this week, even just to play around with having a loophole in my midfield, but I'm still very conflicted on what trades I'll do. But he's someone on that list, even if I go a week early.
Yeah, and look, I do like it. I agree that it's always a risk when you've got obviously players that are going to be coming back. Like that Jack Martin's going to come back. That Walsh is going to come back into that team. But I agree. I think he's done enough. I think he looked good enough there. Alrighty, so some general advice out of round one. We've got a few different things just to touch on here. Sorry, go. Yeah.
Sorry, Dan. I don't want to jump in, but I think we missed the one big one as well. Being Tom Berry from Gold Coast, 163.
Which is, yeah. Sorry, I thought we were going to talk about him. Yeah, go.
No, you're all good. I'll jump on him then. Yeah, 163.5k forward. Put up 100 after scoring a 60. So his break even is just in the absolute. It's in minus 75. So if he scores back-to-back 50s, he's going to immediately jump 100k. He's a little bit of an annoying price point, and he has the buy in between. He plays next week, has the buy, and then will get another price rise. So it's a little bit hard to justify in that regard. Plus, his role is not very SuperCoach friendly. I don't really know how he's pumping out. I don't know how he pumped out a ton. I don't like picking players who don't have good roles or I just don't really think they're that good at footballers. I don't mean that in a very negative way, but he played a few games last year and put out a -4. So, what are you going to do? But 50 is not a hard bar to pass, realistically, if he's playing the full game. And if he's going to make 100k almost guaranteed, you almost really have to consider it. That buy makes it a little difficult, but just really good player or really good SuperCoach pick somehow.
Yeah, and look, you make a good point in terms of having that zero score. I mean, obviously it is best 18, so you might be able to hide him. Who knows, depending on how your team is set up. All right, so those are some of the players that we sort of missed, but we did hit on one of these players coming up in our sort of Rage Trade platform. General advice from round one of if you've got them, maybe jump off real quick. We've only got really two that I sort of had seen. Does anyone want to talk about James Sicily?
No.
I'll briefly mention him. I didn't think he was much of an option because of all of Hawthorn's injuries, so we knew he wasn't going to be. We knew he was going to be playing a lot more accountable, and we saw that. And he didn't help that he's immediately being suspended. He's going to take it to the tribunal, and I reckon he'll get off because Andy McGrath came out and said, yeah, there was nothing in the kick. So we spoke about after the game, and he was just like, yeah, mate, I'm fine, not hurt, no bruise, no nothing. So even though he'll be back next week, Sicily's break even's already going to skyrocket. He's not going to drop price this week, but if you do have him, jump off now. There are so many better options that you can get for cheaper.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not going to change this week. Denver, Granger, Barras is still a fair way away. Obviously, Blank gone for the season. We've already spoken about. We spoke about this. And if you didn't listen to that podcast and you went with Sicily, then hey, you've only got yourself to blame. The other one that I sort of was just having a look at was Jake Lloyd, and this is a guy that was an absolute SuperCoach mainstay for at least the last decade. And I don't think that's an understatement. I reckon he was in every single one of our teams at one point or another for multiple years. Role change. He's out of that back line. They've swapped a few things around. I reckon almost obviously Nick Blakey's the number one user out of the back line for them. But I think like Roberts has been using the ball quite well back there as well. And so he's been pushed onto the wing. His break-even's 164 this week. He only scored 63 this week. I think that if you did put him in thinking, oh, Jake Lloyd, this is a guy who's absolutely solid, I think it's time to start thinking about giving him the move on there. Anyone that we're panicking about in our teams, or that we're saying
many. There's been many to panic about, and I think all of them have gotten a mention so far. But the main ones that we've got listed down: Nick Martin, Zach Fisher, Hayden Young. A few people have Breezy like Scott who will need to make a decision, but I think the three I first mentioned are the absolute scary ones.
Yeah.
Nick Martin, I think, is the one I'd be least concerned about, just because his bad score wasn't like many clangers. It was just pretty poor disposal efficiency. He only had 4 clangers compared to Hayden Young's 11. So I wouldn't be too worried about him. He clearly had the role. Like, he was racking up the fun. So he still had over 25 touches. Just that DE need to pick up. But I'd back in a player of his talent to do so. Zach Fisher had the role as well, which is why I've seen a lot of people quick to dump him, but I am not as ready to do so, I don't think. But he just kind of falls under the player of was never known for his absolute talent at Carlton and has come in supposed to be one of North's primary ball users, like rebounding off the halfback, and was just not a great kick. Really not a great kick.
Yeah, just did you watch, watching some of that game? I don't know. Did you see? You may have seen this, or you didn't watch. You probably didn't watch it, Scott. It was North Melbourne versus Giants. I mean, not really a blockbuster, but I was just watching it, and I swear that they moved McKercher back, and McKercher started being that ball user out of the back line in the second half after they'd sort of watched Fisher butcher the ball a few times. And I'm wondering whether they just go, well, hey, we've got this kid. He's obviously in his first season. We had great success with Sheasel doing that role. Why don't we just put him back there? And he used the ball really well. Like, I think that's the main reason why he got to 88. He was on something like, I don't know, like 15 or something in partway through the second quarter. So I don't know, a few interesting things to look at there.
I think the plan for the most part was to always have McKercher sort of along with Sheasel and Fisher down back. But it is very clear that North want it in McKercher and Sheasel's hands before Fisher, I reckon. Not to say that they don't want it in Fisher's at all. He's still got 21 touches. He's still going to be a part of that back line, but his break-even's up to 92. We need to consider if another week is worth it when there are a lot of decent players who have just popped up. Jack Billings is one who, I don't know if we're planning to discuss him later, but I'll quickly mention him. Sub in his first week, scored about a 15, actually plays the game and scores 115. It was like, played a great preseason game in the same role he played in the round just past. Why was he the sub? The one thing that I saw on Twitter was maybe Goodwin thought that the Sydney smaller wings weren't going to be as good for him, but he's such a good talent. He put up 110. He's gonna. Man, that was just a crazy decision. He just kept watching his score go up and thinking, why couldn't have he been an option to start with us? So
we're talking about Bevo being a knob. Well, kind of a good one. Add him to the list. Sorry, were you going to say something, Scott?
Great.
Just like the blokes we go pre-season, the ball across half-back, that type of guy. And the other one was Alex Sexton, who he only had 17 touches and scored 63 after we had big hopes of getting hundreds for us. I guess the difference is obviously he's 130 grand and Zach Fisher's nearly 400,000. So I'm happy to hold on Sexton for a little bit longer. He'll still make some money, but just need 102 pushed out from him. But they're not all the ones we were talking about in the preseason. A lot of them haven't really inspired us with big scores to go, yep, we're happy we made that choice, that's for sure. The other one was I was somewhat defend.
Sorry, I was just going to say I'll somewhat defend the Sexton pick just because of how terrible the weather conditions were in that game.
Yeah,
the fact he got to 60, that many touches were fantastic. That ball was. You look at the tackle numbers. Both teams had about 70 each, when the average is about 40 to 50. That game was all played through the middle. So the fact that Sexton got to a 65, you take that as your 130K player.
Yeah, and I also snagged. I went with Jeremy Sharp from Freo on the bench, and he managed to shoot out a 70 on the wing there. So wasn't too bad, but just would have wanted one of these blokes just to give me some faith and churn out 100, but none really of of those rookies did for us, which was a bit annoying.
Yeah, no, certainly.
None that I had. Sorry.
On that sort of same, sorry, on that sort of same vein, who are we holding firm on? So obviously, Scott, I know you have Errol Goulden, 109 Supercoach this week, break even 159. You're holding.
Yeah,
I'm sure you're holding.
yeah, of course, because I love him. But I don't. I guess my advice in general was there's no real reason to. If you've picked your primos for a reason, like I know our Supercoach podcast team picked Dawson, and we just took a punt with him, and he turned out an 80. But you pick him for a reason. I think you've just got to ride him. It's only one game. Goulden's been two now. He looked better than the first game. So yeah, I'm not moving on anyone who I've decided that I would want potentially for the end of the year. So the rest of mine scored over 100 anyway, which was pretty good. But even so, I wouldn't want to make the move. That's for sure.
Certainly. The other guy I reckon we're going to touch on in a moment anyway, so we might just skip over him as a hold firm. But we've also obviously going to cast our eyes forward to a few players that we think we might need to bring in coming weeks. And I reckon we've got quite a few people covered with this. But I'll kick things off with some backline opportunities for some players. George, who have got your eye on in the backline?
Yeah. Look, watching the Freo Brisbane game, Luke Ryan's name was called. Felt like it was just Luke Ryan, Sarong, and that kept happening until the game finished and Freo somehow won, just ending a terrible week of tipping for me. But he has one of the best Supercoach roles of any back. When he takes kick-ins, intercepts, he's just he's so good for Supercoach. And every year we don't pick him, and he always seems to just start hot. And every year he's a low ownership, high price, but no one looks at him. Other one a little bit lower, but a guy who gets a lot more attention every year is Lachie Whitfield. Is he back? Maybe. Part of that orange tsunami, he looks fantastic. Again, that bye makes it a little hard to consider, at least this week, like many of the other Gold Coast and GWS premiums I'm sure we'll talk about in the near future. But he looks fantastic taking kick-ins and he rebounds and he does everything you just want from a scorer. Moving into our midfield, I'm stoked with how my midfield started. I had 4 premiums, all of them went 115 plus, so I'm not in a hurry to make any drastic changes there. I think the one I'm looking at probably first, at least in the very near future, is Connor Rosie. I'd love to Caleb Sarong, but I think, Dan, you've got your eye on him too. Yeah. Connor Rosie, he's just a jet. He's taken on that captaincy role with flying colours. Great buy. Big fan. He's an easy pick. The other two that I've got a real close eye on, and I'm going to wait till after their buy and keep an eye on their prices. Just one man we talked about earlier, Errol Goulden. We know how big he can score. It's not a surprise. Just one to watch carefully and hopefully pick up soon. The other one who you alluded to is Clayton Oliver. He is going to be dirt cheap for us. I am so keen for a cheap Clayton Oliver in my team. He has been a perennial Supercoach king. He will be hopefully around 550k after his buy. He's already got a break even of 179. He should drop about. The predictor is if he scores 107, he's going to drop 33k. So we should see him under 600k pretty soon. He's probably going to be one I'm going to try and look at pretty quickly. To our forwards, the one I didn't start with, who I was very upset to how well he did, was Isaac Heaney. The mid-time is real. His scores are real. He is averaging 140 of 2 weeks, which is just stupid. I'm going to wait to see what the news on Hayden Young is vis-a-vis his position in case he does have to drop back to cover all those injuries for Freo. But he's someone I'm looking at as a replacement via some DPP trickery. Yeah, look, even when Parker and Adams come back, he'd be so stiff to move him forward, especially if Sydney are already kicking goals. McDonald kicked 4. You've got other guys like Papley and stuff. They're a good team. Surely you don't have to move him just yet. Maybe at least until Mills is back. The other one that I'm got a close eye on, and he's definitely out there, and he's going to be one you're probably going to hear me say, and you'll go, "Are you silly? What are you doing?"
No.
Harry Mackay. There you go. So the only reasoning behind this is if I keep Zach Fisher this week, which I'm not decided on, and he just shits out another 50 and I go, well, he's an absolute must trade now. Aaron Mackay's going to return from his bye and play North Melbourne. He's already pumped out back-to-back scores of 115. He's going to have a low break even. He could easily make a lot of money and very quickly, especially if he kicks a bag against North Melbourne, which he very well could. Break even is currently minus 21 with a score of the projector's not working because there's a bye this week. But even still, big game against North. He put up 116 last time he played him. Big price upgrade could be inbound. So he's one I've got a real eye on.
Yeah. There's so many to keep our eyes on. Scott, did you have any that you wanted to mention, or?
Look, we've mentioned so many names out here. I think it's Heaney was the one for me that I'm just devastated I didn't go with in the end. But he always just burns me every year. And I didn't go Maxi Holmes, and now I'm regretting it because my team was named after him. The other way, you're going to talk about Sarong, so he's the one that's obvious for everyone. So I'll let you chat about him.
Alrighty. Yeah, look, starting off, we'll go from back to front again. I didn't have Houston. I know we spoke about him, and I tried to get him in, tried to figure out a way to get him in, and I put in Young instead of Houston. Now, part of that was that I obviously Gibkiss in the early game went down, and I wanted to have the cash to go from Gibkiss straight up to Mass after his game. And then, yeah, just like I looked at it and went, well, if I have Houston to Young, I've got the cash. But look, the guy, 114 SuperCoach, he does what he wants. George already said he's a great user, just has free reign with the ball. So I think he's a real target. And we've already spoken about the fact that Port and Freo have a really advantageous buy. So certainly one to look at. In the mids, I think these two guys will be spoken about probably more than any other midfielders, I reckon, in the next coming weeks. Caleb Sarong, as we were just saying, 170 SuperCoach from 46 disposals. Absolutely huge. This guy he has to be the number one Freo mid, and I know that that'll make Andy Brayshaw lovers like Scott a little bit devastated. But move over, Andy. This guy is absolutely M1, absolute freak. Matt Rao. I know that we always talk about like that idea of one-hit wonders or what they do one week, but and yes, look, both games were at home, and pretty good conditions for a guy that has just had 20 clearances. Like we were saying, in hard, lots and lots of tackles, ball, in lots and lots of contests. So it really did suit him. But another 146 average over the first 2 weeks. So I think that this guy is a real I wouldn't say must get, because I think with midfielders, like, you're going to have peaks and troughs, and so if you don't get him now, I don't think that it's like game over. I don't think you won't be able to get him at any point. I think you'll be able to get him at some stage. But if he keeps averaging 140 plus, he's going to be very expensive very quickly. Forward line. I like to look at these two. Look, Archie Perkins, I had him on my list of someone that I was interested in at the start of the year because I hoped that Essendon would see his value and put him in mid. And they did. So that was great, but I didn't have him. So he had, 27 centre bounce attendances in the game, 24 disposals. Yes, he only went at 58%, but he's a goal-kicking mid. He kicked another 2 goals, kicked 2 goals in that game, scored 124. One to keep an eye on. He's not super expensive. I think he's like 370 odd. So he could be a direct swap from Fisher as well as one of those other possibilities there. Last one is Jeremy Cameron, 120 SuperCoach. Yes, it was at the Cattery, but he looked good. He looked back to 2022, moving up the ground, getting lots of ball. And the guy kicked 2 goals, 3. And he got that score of 120. So imagine if he had a kick 5. Imagine if he had a kick 4. That would have been at least 140 point sort of game, maybe at least high 130s. But I think he's back.
Nice one.
Alrighty.
I hope he is.
I hope he is. I hope he is too. Look, as any super coaches are out there wanting to know, we're just going to skip over a few captain's choices. Maybe, do you want to go with the first sort of 4 there, George? Who have
Yeah.
you got your eye on in those games?
So interesting thing about this round is because it's best 18 and teams have buys, you can do your loophole feasibly as late as the second last game of the round. So that's just one thing to consider. All of these guys we talked about, except for the absolute last guy on this list, is technically a vice captain option, just depending on how you want to play it. As Scott mentioned earlier, what might be one of the easier choices is Dacos on Thursday night against St Kilda. He's a back-to-back 130 pluses in. He's almost looked remedial in the nicest way possible. He's just like the laziest 35 in a goal you'll ever see, and yet he's still just he's a freak. He's an absolute freak. It's unfair. A little bit more of a pod these next couple, just because they're not in as many teams. This next one's in mine. LDU against Fremantle. Put up 121 against one of the hardest fixtures you might have to come against, being GWS at GWS, which is just another reason why I'm not so desperate to trade Fisher out. GWS play a super tall forward line. That matchup for him was never going to be great. Just another little nugget to consider. Otherwise, then you move to Sarong against North Melbourne, that same matchup. If you've got him, you're not going to knock back a guy just at 46 touches. Like, it's insane. And the last of the Saturday games that I really like, Max Gawn against Hawthorn. You wouldn't think of Ned Reeves as a traditionally SuperCoach strong ruckman, but Hawthorn do tend to be pretty restrictive against ruck, so it is something to consider. But after Gawn's mammoth week, you can easily slap the vice on him and sleep pretty comfortably.
Scott, what about some of the Sunday possibilities?
Yeah, look, I think we all got, if you got Bont, which most of us did, you got him for the captaincy. So if I've got to Sunday, my vice captain hasn't had a good crack. Like you said, though, with the best 18, is a chance potentially for Bont to be a vice captain, which would be great. And then I'd roll potentially if he struggled into the pig himself, Tom Green, who's the last game against the Eagles, for God's sake. So he should certainly dominate. You've got plenty of choices as well on the Sunday. There's all the Gold Coast mids we've talked about, whether it's Rowell or even Flanders got 120. I don't think you'd necessarily stick with him as captain, and then Port play Richmond, so points galore surely against Richmond. So Butters, or if you've got Rosie, have a crack at one of those guys, and then you could ride home with Tom Green, like you said, if need be.
Plenty of excellent captain choices to consider, and as we were saying, basically a free hit. You get two chances at it apart from that late game, so make the most of it. Alrighty, look, let's wind things up. My second last thing, just before a bit of a bump up for our podcast team, would be the Rage Trade Corner. Again, a bit of a fixture last year, and this is no different. And this guy is gone. Like, I know that last year I was sort of tweeting around this person's out, but no, this guy's out. And that is Harry Himmelberg. I haven't even mentioned this guy's name just yet. But this guy scored 59 SuperCoach off the back of his 101 first round. He has West Coast Eagles this week. If West Coast get it past the halfway point, 10 times, I reckon they're doing a good job against the Orange Tsunami. So I just can't see him getting the ball. His break-even's now 90, and there's just too many good backs that are scoring points that are not that far away from this guy in terms of price range. And obviously, for me anyway, compounding this is the fact that Young was absolutely butchering it. So I need to do something to rectify those backs. And Himmelberg, you are first out. You are the train station's coming up. I'm not slowing down. You're just getting kicked out the door. So laters, Himmelberg, you are turfed.
Oh, God.
Nice one. Cool. So on that note, Dan, you've done a great job hosting this week. Thanks for stepping up. We'll keep rotating through. Just a reminder, guys, I'll pump up if you're keen to follow up how our team's going, or you've got any questions more so for the podcast, hit us up on the email, which is there, tisscpod@gmail.com. We haven't got a question yet. We should give a prize to someone who actually sends a question in. Love to answer the 30 or 40 viewers who are out there. Send us a question, and I'll let George pump up their Twitter.
Yes, absolutely. At SC Sanctum on Twitter, trying to be more active on there. But please check it out. Got a few interesting posts on there about ranking some of the best midfielders. I think I had Jordan Dawson at 1 when I put that post out. So he has absolutely rattled down that list if I were to rectify it. So come for that those hard hitting takes that will almost certainly be wrong nonetheless at SC Sanctum on Twitter if you want to check us out. Good content always going up on there. And also, lastly, the Inner Sanctum, the website itself, should have some SuperCoach articles up there. We'll have more to come as well. Check out all the good work that everyone posts there. So those are where you want to be.
Excellent. Alrighty. Thanks for another week, guys. Obviously, we'll keep an eye out on what's happening in SuperCoach World, and we'll be back next week to discuss how wrong we were yet again, or how right we were. Who knows? Who knows? Gary's and Nathan's. Anyway, stay tuned.
We didn't even talk about Nat 5. Beautiful. End the recording.
Oh, how good was that 5? Thumbed up, yes.